In the spring of 1943, somewhere in the dusty hills of Tunisia, a German tank crew made a decision that would give the Allies one of the most valuable intelligence gifts of the entire war. And they probably had no idea what they had just handed over. The tank was a Tiger I, the most feared armored vehicle on any battlefield at that time, and the crew simply walked away from it. Within weeks, British engineers knew more about Germany's most feared tank than most German crews did. And that knowledge would help kill Tigers on every front. What the British found inside that abandoned machine changed how they understood German engineering, and it revealed weaknesses that would cost the Reich dearly in the years that followed. That moment is where this story begins. The Tiger. It wasn't just another tank rolling off a German assembly line. This was the answer to a crisis that had shaken the entire German military command to its core. And that crisis had a name, the T-34, when German forces pushed into the Soviet Union during Operation Barbarossa in 1941. They expected to crush everything in their path. What they found instead were Soviet tanks that outclassed nearly everything the Wehrmacht had brought with them. The T-34 had sloped armor that deflected shells, a powerful 76.2 millimeter gun, and it was being produced in numbers that seemed almost endless. German tank designers admitted privately that their vehicles were inferior, and the panic at headquarters was very real. If you're enjoying this breakdown of one of World War II's most legendary machines, take a second to subscribe, because what comes next gets even more intense. The order came down fast. Germany needed a heavy tank, something that could dominate any battlefield and destroy the Soviet armor that was giving them so much trouble. The specifications called for a 45-ton vehicle armed with an 88 millimeter cannon, the same caliber that had already proven devastating as an anti-aircraft weapon. Two companies were given the task of designing prototypes, Porsche and Henschel, and the deadline was April 20th, 1942. That date wasn't random. It was Adolf Hitler's birthday, and he wanted to see his new superweapon demonstrated as a gift to himself. Ferdinand Porsche, the same man who would later give his name to the famous sports car company, took this project personally. He defied orders from the Military Development Office and built his own prototype using his own ideas, pushing his engineers to work around the clock. The competition between the two designs was fierce, and when the prototypes were finally compared at Rastenburg, the Henschel design won approval. There was a catch, though. The military liked Porsche's turret design better, so the final Tiger I ended up being a hybrid, Henschel's hull carrying Porsche's turret into battle. Production started in August of 1942, and this is where the problems began. The Tiger I was an absolute beast of a machine, but building it was slow, expensive, and complicated. Each one took twice as long to manufacture as a standard Panzer IV, and cost roughly 4 times more than a Stu-G3 assault gun. The German factories would only ever produce 1,347 Tiger I tanks before production ended in August of 1944. Compare that to the 84,000 T-34s the Soviets built, and you start to understand the math problem Germany was facing. The design philosophy behind the Tiger I was simple, almost brutish. Where the Soviet T-34 used clever angles to deflect incoming shells with relatively thin armor, the Tiger I just used thickness. The frontal armor was 100 millimeters thick, the sides were 80 millimeters, and the whole thing weighed around 57 tons. That's double the weight of the Panzer IV that came before it. The armor plates were flat, welded together with precision that impressed Allied engineers who examined captured vehicles later in the war. There were no fancy angles to bounce shells away, just raw steel thickness designed to stop anything that hit it. The suspension system used interleaved road wheels, which gave the tank a smooth ride over rough terrain, but created a maintenance nightmare. Replacing a single inner wheel could require removing several outer wheels first, and in the mud and snow of the Ostern front, those wheels had a nasty habit of freezing solid overnight. Soviet commanders figured this out quickly, and sometimes ordered attacks at dawn specifically to catch Tiger crews before they could free their tracks from the ice. What made the Tiger one truly terrifying, though, was what sat in that turret. The 88mm 56 cannon was a legend in its own right. It was derived from the Flak 18 anti-aircraft gun, a weapon that German forces had already discovered worked devastatingly well against ground targets. The velocity of the shells, the flat trajectory, and the sheer penetrating power made it effective at ranges that most Allied tanks couldn't even shoot back from. British testing during the war recorded 5 consecutive hits on a target measuring just 40 by 45 centimeters, and that target was sitting 1,200 meters away. The Zeiss telescopic sights were considered some of the finest optics mounted on any tank of the era. There's even a recorded instance of a Tiger I destroying a Soviet T-34 at 3,900 meters. Though that was almost certainly a lucky shot rather than standard practice. Most engagements happen between 800 and 1,200 meters, partly because ammunition was expensive, and partly because German doctrine emphasized accuracy over volume of fire. The electric firing system was another innovation that improved precision, eliminating the tiny bit of mechanical delay that traditional percussion systems introduced. None of this mattered, though, if the tank couldn't get to the battlefield in one piece, and the Tiger I's combat debut was a disaster. September 1942, the Sieniawino offensive near Leningrad. Hitler was impatient. He wanted his new wonder weapon in action immediately, months before the engineers felt it was ready. The first Tigers were rushed to the front, and what happened next became an embarrassment that German command tried to bury. The ground was soft, muddy, and completely wrong for a 57-ton vehicle. Tigers got stuck, engines failed, transmissions broke. 6 of the tanks were destroyed by Soviet 122mm howitzer fire before they could accomplish anything meaningful. Worse still, one Tiger was captured nearly intact and shipped to Moscow, where Soviet engineers began studying every inch of it. The myth of the invincible Tiger had cracks in it before it even got started. North Africa would be different. When Tigers arrived in Tunisia in December of 1942, they found terrain that actually suited their strengths. Open desert where their long-range cannon could dominate. At the Battle of Jerba, just 3 Tiger tanks destroyed 9 Allied vehicles without taking a single loss in return. The Churchills and Shermans facing them simply couldn't compete at range. Their shells either bounced off the thick frontal armor or fell short entirely. British 6-pounder anti-tank guns scored hits but rarely achieved penetration from the front. The Tiger was becoming the nightmare that Allied tank crews had feared. And what happened next would prove just how dominant this machine could be. The summer of 1943 brought Kursk, the largest tank battle in history, and the Tiger I was right in the middle of it. The Schwer Panzer Abteilung 503, one of the heavy tank battalions equipped with Tigers, recorded staggering numbers during the fighting. Between July and September, they claimed 501 enemy tanks destroyed, along with 388 anti-tank guns, 79 artillery pieces, and even 7 aircraft caught on the ground. The battalion lost 18 Tigers beyond repair during that same period, giving them a kill ratio that seemed almost unbelievable. Across all Tiger units, the average ratio was approximately 5.74 enemy tanks destroyed for every Tiger lost. Some units did even better. The 13th Company of the Panzer Regiment Grossdeutschland achieved a ratio of nearly 17-1. Individual commanders built legendary reputations. Michael Wittmann, serving with the 501st SS Heavy Tank Battalion, would eventually be credited with destroying 138 tanks and 132 anti-tank guns during his career, making him one of the most successful tank aces of the entire war. But here's the thing about those numbers. Many of those kills were against T-34s, still equipped with the older 76.2 millimeter gun, a cannon that couldn't penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor at any practical combat distance. The Soviets knew this was a problem, and they were already working on solutions. The first step was testing. In January of 1943, Soviet engineers put a captured Tiger through exhaustive trials, shooting at it with every anti-tank weapon they had. The results confirmed what frontline troops already knew, and they also revealed a path forward. The 85 millimeter gun could penetrate the Tiger's armor at 1,000 meters. That finding accelerated the development of the T-34-85, a new variant of their most successful tank fitted with a larger turret and the more powerful cannon. The IS-2 heavy tank came next, mounting a massive 122 millimeter gun that could destroy a Tiger from any angle at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters. The Su-152 self-propelled gun earned the nickname Zveroboy, which translates to beast killer, and it lived up to that name on the battlefield. The German advantage was slipping away, and the capture of Tiger 131 would only accelerate that process. April 21st, 1943, the hills around Jebel Jaffa in Tunisia, a location the British called Point 174, the 48th Royal Tank Regiment was pushing forward in their Churchill tanks when they encountered Tigers from the German 504th Heavy Tank Battalion. The fighting was intense, and most of the British shells were bouncing harmlessly off the German armor. But one shot found a weak point. A 6-pounder round struck the turret ring of Tiger 131, jamming the mechanism that allowed the turret to rotate. A second round hit the gun barrel. The crew, suddenly trapped in a tank that couldn't aim its main weapon, made a choice that seems almost unthinkable given how valuable the vehicle was. They opened the hatches, climbed out, and ran. The British couldn't believe what they were seeing. An intact Tiger, one of the most secret and feared weapons in the German arsenal, was just sitting there, waiting to be collected. Recovery teams moved in quickly. The damage was minor, easily repairable, and within days, the tank was being examined by intelligence officers who could barely contain their excitement. The British shipped Tiger 131 back to England for detailed analysis, and what they found confirmed some suspicions while revealing new information entirely. The welding quality was exceptional, far superior to the riveted construction used on many Allied vehicles. The armor steel itself was excellent, though later Tiger II production would suffer from material shortages that reduced quality significantly. But the examination also exposed critical weaknesses. The turret traverse was painfully slow. Using the fine adjustment setting for accurate aiming, a full 360-degree rotation took nearly a minute. In close combat, this was a death sentence, and Allied tankers who learned to get around the sides of a Tiger had a genuine chance of destroying it before the gun could track them. Fuel consumption was enormous, creating logistics problems for German units already struggling with supply lines. The transmission was prone to failure, especially when crews pushed the engine too hard. The weight made crossing bridges almost impossible, forcing crews to seek out fords or specially reinforced crossing points, and sometimes those crossing points gave way anyway, sending the precious tank into the water. The cost analysis was damning. Every Tiger built meant resources that could have produced 2 Panzer IVs or 4 Stogs. The Germans were trading quantity for quality, and was never going to work against enemies who could produce overwhelming numbers. The Soviets understood this math perfectly. While the British were examining their captured prize, Soviet factories were ramping up production to levels the Germans couldn't hope to match. The T-34-85 began rolling off assembly lines in early 1944, and suddenly the kill ratios that Tiger crews had enjoyed started to collapse. Where earlier T-34s had to get dangerously close to have any chance of penetrating Tiger armor, the new variant could fight effectively at ranges where both tanks were threatening each other. The IS-2 was even more dangerous, a heavy tank that could trade blows with a Tiger and win. German industry responded with the Tiger II, also called the Königstiger or King Tiger, which added sloped armor and even thicker protection. But the engine remained essentially the same, now trying to move 70 tons instead of 57, and the mechanical problems that plagued the Tiger I became even worse. Material shortages meant the armor steel was lower quality, sometimes fragmenting on impact and filling the crew compartment, with deadly shrapnel even when the shell itself didn't penetrate. The war of production was never going to favor Germany, and no amount of engineering excellence could change that fundamental reality. Tiger 131 survived the war, sitting in various storage locations, while the world moved on to new conflicts and new weapons. In September of 1951, the British Ministry of Supply officially transferred the tank to the Bovington Tank Museum, where it would eventually become one of the most famous exhibits in any military collection anywhere in the world. Restoration work began in 1990, and by December of 2003, the Tiger was running again. Today, Tiger 131 is the only operational Tiger I left on the planet. It starts up for special events, the Maybach engine growling to life just as it did 8 decades ago, and visitors who see it in motion are watching a piece of history that nearly all of its siblings didn't survive to share. In the era, the Tiger Fible, the illustrated training manual given to Tiger crews, has become a collector's item worth thousands of dollars. Museums around the world display fragments, turrets, and partial hulls recovered from battlefields across Europe and North Africa. But only Bovington has a Tiger that can actually move under its own power. The Tiger I was, without question, one of the most formidable weapons of the Second World War. It could destroy entire squadrons of enemy tanks in frontal engagements, and it inspired genuine terror in the crews who had to face it. But it was also a machine that showed the limits of pursuing quality over quantity in industrial warfare. Germany built 1,347 Tigers. The Soviets built 84,000 T-34s. The Americans built over 49,000 Shermans. No kill ratio, no matter how impressive, was going to overcome that kind of disparity. And it all might have taken longer for the Allies to figure out, until one German crew handed the answer to the British for free to take home. If this story gave you a new perspective on one of history's most legendary tanks, subscribe now, because there are plenty more untold stories like this one waiting to be explored.